The epidemic of left-wing violence and Antifa-inspired terror has been escalating for nearly a decade. At universities, Antifa has organized riotous mobs to attack campus speakers. I see it all the time. And these are agitators, anarchists, and they're paid. And you'll find that out. You'll be finding it out very soon. You should see what we have on these people. These are bad people. These are people that want to destroy our country. We're not going to let it happen. They've used armed gangs to assault local police in cities nationwide, and they've attacked journalists reporting on their crimes. So the journalists that report on their crimes, don't worry, you're very safe. I hope that's not going to turn you around, but they have been very threatening to people, but we're going to be very threatening to them, far more threatening to them than they ever were with us, and that includes the people that fund them. Probably some of the people I know, some of the people I dine with, but if they do, they're in deep trouble. So we're going to be looking very strongly at the people that are funding these operations. When you see the signs, and they're all made out of a beautiful, beautiful paper, beautiful, nice, stiff, very expensive paper with beautiful wood handles, all the same color. They come from very expensive printing machines. These are not people that write out their signs in a basement that believe in something. These are paid anarchists.
Up until recently, it was the stated position of the Democrat Party and its fake news media handmaidens that Antifa simply doesn't exist. It's a crazy right-wing conspiracist fever dream, they would say. It's just young people engaged in organic grassroots activism, exercising their sacred First Amendment rights. Pay no attention to the fact that they all wear the same uniform and have all the same equipment and all the same signage. Pay no attention to the fact that they can mobilize in their tens of thousands in any city within 24 hours or less. Don't you worry your pretty little heads about any of that. We, your elected Democrat leaders and your legacy corporate news media, we are here to tell you there is no national or international organization called Antifa, and you can trust our word implicitly because we would never lie and we have no agenda nor any ulterior motives. They have since had to drop that particular pack of lies because eventually it just became too absurd and too unbelievable. More recently, they have shifted to a newer pack of lies that says, okay, maybe there is a thing called Antifa, but come on. It's not like it's some well-organized, well-financed international terror syndicate. That is still a crazy right-wing conspiracist fever dream. It's actually just a collection of loosely connected local groups that all happen to call themselves Antifa and all happen to share the same taste in rhetoric and weaponry and wardrobe. But we know how this song and dance works. We have seen it play out enough times to know when we are in the middle of it. It's like the 5 stages of grief, but it's the 5 stages of when Democrats and fake news media performance artists get caught lying about something. Stage 1 is nope. That bad thing doesn't exist. You are fucking crazy for even suggesting it. Stage 2 is, okay, maybe that bad thing used to exist at one time, but certainly it doesn't exist anymore. Stage 3 is, okay, the bad thing still exists, but it's a very small-scale, isolated phenomenon and not worthy of your attention. Stage 4 is, okay, that bad thing really does exist, and it really is quite widespread, but the bad thing is actually a good thing. And Stage 5 is, okay, we were lying about everything the whole time. Let's never speak of this again. It's Thursday, the 9th of October. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where it's October, and you know what that means. Our famous deer jerky is now available down in the gift shop, so get yours today while supplies last. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's talk about how strange it is living in a country whose constitution guarantees a free press, but the people we used to call the press have decided to not do journalism anymore. If we still had a functioning press, you'd think they would be highly interested in investigating Antifa's organizational structure and its funding sources, since it is obviously a highly sophisticated international criminal syndicate and terrorist organization. If we had a functioning press, journalists from mainstream news outlets would be falling all over each other, chasing down the story, trying to get the big scoop. There would be so many Pulitzer Prizes to win, so much professional glory to attain, but alas, that world is well and truly gone. Pulitzers today get handed out according to which establishment transcriptionist stooge wrote the most fanciful pack of lies. Prizes that were once awarded to people who exposed the truth are now awarded to people who obfuscate the truth most effectively. But the result of this has been that really for the first time in our history, journalism has been truly democratized. The duty of doing the truth-seeking that was once the province of mainstream press outlets has now fallen to bloggers and YouTubers and independent, self-financed, crowd-funded journalists. In other words, just the sorts of people who President Donald Trump hosted at the White House yesterday for a roundtable discussion that was concerned with finding the truth about Antifa's organizational and funding sources. And let's just take a moment to marvel at the fact that this roundtable discussion actually exists, because the duty shouldn't fall to the President of the United States to organize a thing like this. This is the job that the mainstream press, the people who still unironically describe themselves as journalists, are supposed to be doing. But you won't hear one single word about this roundtable discussion from any corporate legacy fake news media sludge factory, and if you do, they will describe it as a meeting of crazed right-wing conspiracy theorists. They'll say everybody at the table is a fascist and a racist because that's just what they do. They are the absolute last people in the world who want the truth about Antifa to be publicly exposed because they are Antifa's fellow travelers. Antifa and the corporate fake news media are on the same team, and they answer to the same left-wing billionaire paymasters. When federal immigration personnel go into an American city to perform their sworn duty of removing foreign criminals who are present in the country unlawfully, pursuant to the laws that have been duly enacted by the Congress, and they are violently opposed by thousands of nihilist, anarchist shitbags in black pajamas, the corporate news media are cheering for the nihilist, anarchist shitbags. Why is that? Because they are all funded by the same people, and you don't bite the hand that signs your paycheck. Now, if you haven't seen yesterday's roundtable discussion, I do encourage you to find time to watch the whole thing, and I will provide a link to it in the description. But I want to call particular attention to the words that were spoken by Seamus Bruner, who is the Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute. And I'm going to append a portion of his remarks to the front end of the video. Mr. Bruner and the FAI have been working for quite some time to untangle the spider web of evil and malevolence whereby Antifa and other violent leftist thugs get their funding, which, not to belabor the point, but this is supposed to be the job of the press, but we have no functioning press. And here is what he had to say when he was invited to speak by the president. Quote, "We found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network, it's other funding networks. The Arabella Funding Network, the Tides Funding Network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country." End quote. And it certainly won't come as a surprise to anybody with a brain in their head that the Soros organization is heavily involved in all of this stuff, because of course they are. Destabilizing American society and Western society more broadly is their raison d'etre. It's what they do, it's the air they breathe, and in order to give themselves plausible deniability, in order so it's less screamingly obvious that they are engaged in criminal malfeasance, just like the Biden crime family, they established fun little networks of NGOs and dummy shell companies to move the money from place to place to place until it has been sufficiently laundered that their fingerprints are no longer directly on it. Mr. Bruner and the GAI have a couple of shorthand terms they use for the whole big sordid arrangement. They call it the Protest Industrial Complex or Riot Incorporated. And those are both very apt descriptors, because the absolute last thing this is any sort of organic grassroots activism. This is very deep-pocketed, very profoundly evil, radical leftist benefactors who are waging open war against the U.S. government and every other government and group and person whom they perceive as being on the side of Western civilization. Mr. Bruner goes on to say, quote, "Number 2, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organization, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Incorporated investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists," end quote. And we know all too well what the point is of calling good, honest Americans fascists. It is to send the implicit coded signal that yes, that person is a fascist, so it's okay to kill them. Not only is it okay to kill them, in fact, killing that person is your moral obligation as an anti-fascist. But you know what else happens when you build a big labyrinthine network of fake shell companies and fake NGOs in order to launder all this financing for left-wing terror and conceal its original source? It enables corrupt, unscrupulous Democrat members of Congress to funnel U.S. taxpayer dollars directly toward the Antifa cause, which was also reported by Mr. Bruner during his remarks yesterday. Quote, "And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, end quote. And it's not remotely difficult to see how this can happen. We know how the NGO grift works. Congress throws around all of these 9-figure, 10-figure, 11-figure omnibus spending bills, and it's all too easy for members to slip in a little $4 million line item here and a little $7 million line item there and say it's going to some NGO for some nonsense like promoting voting rights in underserved LGBT communities or some shit. You just vomit out some fashionable leftist buzzwords, and the number is so small in the grand scheme of the larger bill that nobody notices or cares all that much, but the net result is that you and I are directly financing the Antifa terrorists. So consider that the next time you're watching those shitbags beating a random pedestrian or trying to burn down a federal courthouse. And I want to close with an excerpt from an article that Mr. Bruner contributed to Breitbart.com back in June of this year, and it's in reference to the No Kings protests that took place during the late spring and early summer. Quote, "The expected worldwide mobilization of protests against President Donald Trump this weekend will hardly be a spontaneous eruption. On the contrary, the tumult is a carefully plotted production organized by the Indivisible Project and financed by the Progress Dark Money Network, managed and advised by Arabella Advisors, which has perfected the mounting of made-to-order protests. Since 2019, the Arabella Network has dumped more than $100 million into the coffers of the official No Kings protest partners, including the creator of the official protest songbook. This grassroots nationwide Days of Defiance targets Trump and his billionaire allies, according to the organizers. But the Arabella Network's biggest benefactors are the left's own billionaire heroes, including George Soros, Bill Gates, and Jörg Wyss, Mark Zuckerberg, and Reid Hoffman," end quote. And with that, I am done. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Get off my lawn.